Hello and welcome to this video. My name is Hannah and I love stories. One of my favorite stories is Wicked. I first saw the musical Wicked when I was 10 years old, fell in love, and the rest is history. And so with Wicked for Good, the second part of the Wicked movie coming out next week, I wanted to make a little video recommending books to the main characters in Wicked. So this is kind of similar to what I've done with the Disney princesses. If you happen to have seen those videos that I made recommending books based off of the Disney princesses and their personalities, this is going to be kind of similar. If you love books, if you love stories, if you love Wicked, consider subscribing. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into the video. We're going to start off with Glinda, okay? And then we'll finish everything with Elphaba. So if you want Elphaba, you gotta wait until the end of the video. Starting with Glinda. The first book that I've chosen, recommendation that I would give to Glinda, is Emma by Jane Austen. I love Jane Austen, big Jane Austen fan over here. Any chance I get, I'm gonna bring up Jane Austen, but I feel like this one is perfect for Glinda because Emma and Glinda have a lot in common. They both come from very privileged backgrounds. They both love to be in the spotlight. They both love getting that praise and adoration from everybody around them, and they get that quite frequently, and they love that. They need that. And because of this, they are very good in the sense of like performative good, you know? And over the course of the book, they learn to be a little bit more genuinely good, and that there are things that you can do to be good that have a bigger impact than just saying nice things to people or smiling at people and just that kind of like surface level good. They have a lot in common. And another thing I want to mention is the way that Emma kind of coaches her friend Harriet and kind of helps her to be more attractive, more noble, a little bit more genteel, a little bit more desirable to men so that she can find a suitable, noble husband. Reminds me of the little makeover scene in Popular. That is Emma and why I would recommend it to Glinda. My second recommendation for Glinda is The House in the Cerulean Sea. This book is about a social worker in this magical world who has to go evaluate and inspect this orphanage for magical children. And this social worker named Linus has always lived a very sheltered life, a very privileged life, similar to Glinda, because, you know, he's not magical, he's not different in any way. He's never had, you know, the system, had the larger system, culture and society at large against him. And so he's never really seen how the world he lives in is oppressive to magical beings until he goes to this orphanage for magical children. And he's faced with the difficult decision to do what the organization he works for has told him to do, or to protect these children and protect their home. I feel like that difficult decision of, you know, what do you do? Do you just keep doing what's easy? Do you choose the path that you've always been on because you've never really had any opposition against you? Or do you do the right thing even though there might be some backlash? I feel like I would recommend this book to Glinda because I feel like it mirrors the conflict that Glinda has, that she faces when she and Elphaba discover that the wizard isn't really all-powerful. He isn't really that benevolent either, and she has the choice to continue living the way she's always lived, having that privilege, having that love and adoration from society in general, or does she follow Elphaba and rebel against the wizard and try to overthrow the wizard with Elphaba? And so that's why I would recommend this book, because I hope that Glinda sees a little bit of that, a little bit of a common experience in this book and can maybe learn from it. And I will say that I am really excited for this second part of the Wicked movie because just based on the trailers, it seems like they're going to really expand on that conflict that Glinda has. I'm really excited to see that in this new movie. I really hope that I am interpreting the trailers correctly and that we are actually going to see more of that, because I think that's fascinating and I want to see more of that. Next, Fiyero. For Fiyero, I am going to recommend first The Great Gatsby, because I feel like Fiyero and Great Gatsby are very similar. You know, they're party boys, but on the surface, and, you know, they love extravagance and they love fun. Deep down, they are not happy themselves. They yearn for something deeper, something more meaningful. They want love. They want freedom. They want just something more meaningful. They want purpose. Fiyero's gotta read Great Gatsby because I feel like he would really relate to Great Gatsby. Book number 2 for Fiyero is The Night Circus. I'm gonna recommend this one to Fiyero because this is about characters who also yearn for love and yearn for freedom. In this book, we have 2 magicians who are in this lifelong competition against each other, and there's no way out of it except to die. There's also a twist in that these 2 magicians fall in love, and they don't want to be fighting each other. They don't want to be competing against each other until one of them kills the other person. And so they want freedom from this. They want to just love. They want to be together, but they can't. Like I said with The Great Gatsby, I feel like Fiyero just yearns for something deeper connection. And I think we kind of see that in that, like, yes, he doesn't dislike the attention that he gets for, you know, being, you know, this beautiful, attractive man. But he also, you can tell that he wants something deeper. He doesn't just want people swooning over him all the time. He wants somebody to actually understand him and love him. I feel like this book is that. I feel like, and I also feel like the kind of dark, but like still magical, still whimsical atmosphere in this book is reminds me of the like production design of the original stage musical of Wicked, how it's like this kind of dark steampunky kind of design, and it kind of, I don't know, there was something about that just reminded me, something about the dark magical atmosphere of the book reminded me of the dark but magical steampunky vibe of the stage musical. So there are 2 books I would recommend to Fiyero. Now for the bad guys. Here are a couple of books I would recommend to The Wizard and Madame Morrible. Book number 1 is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. If you know anything about The Picture of Dorian Gray, it is a classic, so I hope you've at least heard of it. This is a book about a young man who seemingly does not age or does not lose his youthful beauty ever, and it's a little bit of, there's a question throughout the whole book, like, why is this way? And I don't want to spoil the book. I know it's a classic and a lot of people have already read it. Just in case you haven't, I don't want to spoil the book, but I will say that there is a darker explanation as to why he's not getting older or losing his beauty on the outside. As you can kind of imagine, this book really is about vanity, this obsession with image, and about like lying and the lengths that people will go to try and preserve their image. Even if that hurts them, if it hurts others, if it requires them to lie to people, they will do it to preserve this image. And I feel like that aligns perfectly with the wizard. You know, he doesn't have power, but he loves that when he arrived in Oz, he got all this attention. People were curious about him. People assumed that he had power. And so he is just gonna continue to play into that image and will do whatever it takes to uphold that image and uphold that power, no matter how many people he has to lie to, no matter how many people or animals he has to hurt in the process. He will do that to maintain his image and his power. Book number 2 for the wizard is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is part of the Hunger Games series. And this book in the Hunger Games series is a prequel to the Hunger Games, and it's all about President Snow as a teenager. And we start to see how he became, how he was given these little bits of power even as a teenager that led him to become this tyrant. President Snow, as a teenager, he is performing. You know, his family used to be this really well-known, very wealthy, very respected family, and now they're poor, but they're still in these circles of people that have a lot of wealth, that are very respected in the capital. And so he's trying to perform and like play this role of being wealthy so that nobody finds out that his family is actually really poor, that he and his cousin and his grandmother have nothing, that they're starving. Like, he's trying to cover this up because he believes that he can attain that wealth and attain that position in their society again, and so he doesn't want anything to jeopardize that possibility, and so he's constantly performing. And I feel like, again, going back to the whole image discussion that we just talked about, the wizard is constantly performing. You know, he isn't even himself in his own palace, in his own home. He shows himself to Elphaba and Madame Morrible and Glinda, but when he calls for the guards, when he calls for anybody else, he hides behind his little machine and has that big mechanical head talking for him. It's an image thing. He's performing. He's trying, again, to live up to the expectations that all of these people in Oz have of him, of, you're magical, right? You have this great power, so be this great and powerful wizard. The actions that the wizard is taking, particularly with the animals in Oz, feels very dystopian, feels very tyrannical, which again aligns with President Snow and his actions in the Hunger Games. Now for our main girl, my favorite, Elphaba. I chose 2 books for Elphaba, the first being Legendborn. This book is about a young girl who enters a secret magical society in the American South that is based on Arthurian legend, and she comes to find that all of these members of the society are descendants of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. She's one of them. She is one of these descendants, and so she is trying to understand her place in this, but also feels kind of like an outsider within this society because she is Black, and the rest of these people are not only descendants of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, but descendants of plantation owners, and still have a lot of that like deeply ingrained racism and systemic racism and biases against Black people within them. And so she's trying to find a place in this society, but this group also is working against her because her skin is a different color than theirs. She is fighting to make a place for this place. She's fighting these injustices within this society, just like Elphaba chooses to stand up and fight for the wrong and injustice that is happening in Oz. So I would recommend Legendborn. The next book I would recommend to Elphaba is Nimona. Now, I would recommend this one specifically for, let's imagine that Elphaba's had a tough day. She's had a cat fight with her best friend. People have been screaming at her as she's been flying past on her broom, and she just needs a little bit of a break. I'm going to recommend Nimona because I feel like the format in which it's presented, being a graphic novel, is a little bit lighter, a little bit gentler, but it still has themes about being different and that you can still make a big difference even if others view you as less than because you're different. Nimona is about a young girl who can shapeshift, and because she has this magical power to shapeshift, she is kind of on the push to the outskirts of society, but she's trying to reclaim a place in the world, in her world and her society, draw attention to the unfairness that she's faced throughout her life. And so she partners up with a villain who isn't really a villain. He similarly has been labeled as the bad guy when he really isn't. And so Nimona and Ballister, this villain, pair up and they try to clear their names of the untrue and terrible stories that have been told about them. The banter between these two characters, like I said, is very humorous, very witty, and so I feel like after a long day of trying to overthrow the wizard, Elphaba would appreciate something a little bit lighter, a little bit wittier, a little bit more humorous, but still has a message that gives her hope. Still has a message that she can relate to that keeps her fighting. So that's why I would recommend Nimona. And those are all of the books that I would recommend to the main characters in Wicked, and I hope these fictional characters would enjoy these fictional books and find something to learn from these other fictional characters if they were to read these books. What do you think of these recommendations? Do you have any recommendations of your own? And are you excited for Wicked for good? Because I know I am. Please let me know down in the comments answer any or all of those questions. I'd love to hear from you. With all that said, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening to me ramble about books. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.